Happy Father's Day, everybody. And today's talk is going to be about mothers and fathers and love and celebrating it. And I don't know what it says on your bulletin, but can't cross it off. I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I never thought I would be a father. I didn't plan on it. I was pulled into it I came into fatherhood the way most children come into the world, kicking and screaming and crying, resisting it all the way. And the relationship I was in, same thing. I mean, I'm not ready. This is a great mantra. If you practice this mantra over and over again if you want to be stuck in your life. I'm not ready. We don't have the money. All of that. I was there. I was, practicing the art of mastering the fear of commitment, the fear of entrapment, the fear of diapers. I was a soiled brat. Cancel that. Don't record that. And gradually, over a period of time, there was an opening of my heart that led to being willing to become a dad. I'd say about 2 weeks ago, I experienced a major shift. That was a joke. No, the first major shift was she was 6 months old, and it was my job to help her get dressed, and she was sitting on the bed, and just when I put the shirt, just about to put the shirt over her, she had her hands up the way I asked, and then she fell down onto the bed, giggling. And then she did it again and again, and I realized that she had a sense of humor and she was playing a joke on me at 6 months of age, and that somehow, that did it. And then when she was 3 years old, I was playing with her on the bed. I was doing a little wrestling, just experimenting with how much I could use my male power to play with her, because she seemed to want it at the time. She wanted me to play a little rough, and so we were playing together, and I just happened to ask her, how am I doing, her name is Asia, as a dad? Do you have any feedback for me as a dad? Asking a 3-year-old. And she said, well, sometimes you're too hard on me. And I said, oh my God, because my father was too hard on me, and I was doing everything I could to be a more gentle, unconditionally accepting and loving parent. And she's 3 years old and she's telling me that I'm too hard on me. I started to cry, and I went to my partner and said, Asia just told me I'm being too hard on her. And Dina said, Scott, you were just wrestling with her on the bed. Maybe she was talking about that. Kids are in the present moment. They don't make these, they don't have these sweeping statements. And it occurred to me that I took that the wrong way, that I wasn't being too hard on her. I was just wrestling a little too. Anyway, but I was so scared and so uncomfortable with that piece of feedback because my father was really hard on me. He came from a generation where you want to protect your kids and you want to prepare them for the world. And the world, in that belief system is a hard place. And so being hard on your children is a way of toughening them up, and it's love that would want you to do that. It's a belief system that's been changing very rapidly on the planet, but it was his heart that wanted that for me and treated me in certain ways that I didn't like, that I rebelled from. And when I started rebelling, he disappeared. He said, I can't handle this, and he went away emotionally, and it was like I didn't have a father. And that was very painful, and we lived in the same house, but we were very much at odds with each other. And one day, I had done a retreat with my mother, who's a little bit more emotionally available. I took her to this retreat center, and we did a 5-day mother, daughter, father, son retreat. And when it was done, the facilitator said to me, good work, Scott, now go find your father. And I said, wow, find my father. He's in Brooklyn. I don't have to find him. You're like, what did he mean? What he meant was find your relationship with your father. Find what's good about your father. Find what's right and good and beautiful and all the gifts he gave you that you've been rejecting because you've been feeling so rejected. So I went and through lots of therapy and stuff, I came up with a letter. And those of you who have read my book are going to hear it again. This is a letter I wrote to him. We hadn't been talking to each other for a while. And I wrote, "Dear Dad, I've been thinking a lot about you these days, and I want you to know my thoughts. It seems to me that in my pain, confusion, and my struggle to define myself as someone separate from you, I rejected you entirely, along with everything you stood for. Lately, I've been seeing that in my rebellion, I have set aside a part of myself that has not been allowed to develop and that can make me a more whole person. I've come to regret that rebellious side of my personality, and I'm setting out to make changes. You tried to teach me by example how to be disciplined, how to be a reliable provider for oneself and for a family. You showed me how to live in the world with a sense of security and structure. You modeled success in ways I did my best not to emulate, and I'm feeling sorry about that. It was as if I turned away from your most powerful way of showing me that you loved me, the way you lived your life. Dad, I can sense that my work in the world, my relationships with women, and my sense of self-esteem are all affected by this stance. I am working diligently in my life to develop within myself the qualities you tried to pass on to me. Ouch. It's hard for a sufferer of Peter Pan syndrome to grow into being an adult, but my happiness does depend on it. Dad, you are a part of me, and it's time I stopped resisting that and started accepting and celebrating the gifts you have given me. You have passed on to me a legacy of character traits that are my missing link in my development as a person. I love you, Dad. I don't want to wait until you are on your deathbed or until you are gone to feel and to express that. You've given me so much by the way you work, play, and live. I want you to know, as late as it may be, that I'm beginning to receive and to learn from you and your life. Growing up is a scary thing, but I'm getting there. Your son, Scott." So after I sent that, I waited by the mailbox, so to speak, for weeks, wondering if he would reply and how he would reply. So remember, there had been so much judgment and misunderstanding, and I was afraid he was just going to hear that from his head, and I was so glad to be wrong, because when I got a response from him, here's what his response was. "Dear Scott, your letter has touched me deeper than I can ever convey to you in words. I cried like a baby during and after reading it. You've come a long way, farther than you realize. Scott, don't berate yourself for rejecting me and my values and my world. It was I who rejected you when you didn't conform to what I wanted for you. Rejection is something you learned from me. I blame myself. Don't forget I was supposed to be the adult and you were the child. I should have handled things wiser and more maturely. Scott, listen to me very carefully. Let's not dwell on the past, except if it can help us understand the present and prevent us from making the same mistakes ever again. As I've said before, you have come a long way, and I've reacted to your changes very positively. You say growing up is scary and difficult. Please remember, I'm still trying to grow up. Let's help each other. Scott, I love you very much. I always have. I hope any scars are temporary and reversible. Always, Daddy-O." And we did have a reconciliation that started with those letters, and it wasn't always easy. It was messy. And when he was on his deathbed, he died a few years ago, he took my hands and he looked me in the eyes and he said, "I had a wonderful life." And I thought it was like so beautiful, and maybe like some of the drugs or the cancer or something eating away at the memory of all of the pain in his life, the prejudice and his army, his traumatic experience in World War II, and the divorce with mom, and how, you know, his kids were estranged for a while. I mean, all of these things that I can think of. And he just was, I had a wonderful life. And I remember the definition of forgiveness in A Course in Miracles. One of the things it says about forgiveness is selective remembering. Only the loving thoughts and behaviors that you've ever given or received are true. Everything else must be forgotten. Forgiveness is a process of forgetting what never was true, what never was real. It happened, it was painful, but it wasn't reality. It was perceptual, it was your interpretations that you laid upon reality that created so much pain. So I remember that. And so when I thought about cancer eating away his body and perhaps his brain cells, I was so grateful that he was dying with the perception, the awareness, the heart opening of, I had a wonderful life. All he could remember was the beauty of it. And it struck me that it wasn't so much that he was senile or brain damage or this. No, he was actually connected to reality, more so than most of us. When my daughter was 4, we were having a little power struggle about something, and she hit me. And my hand went up. And I was grateful. There was a moment in time where I looked at my hand and what I was about to do, and I had that choice point where I didn't have to go into automatic behavior. I was able to actually, within a fraction of a second, have a long conversation with my hand. I said, excuse me, what are you about to do? And the answer was, we're about to teach her a lesson in nonviolence. I put my hand down, right, because that was enough. It's like the old belief system that my father and mother were entrenched in, that I understand and respect, but no longer put energy into it, is that you can teach children, or anybody, what not to do by doing it. And the whole belief system that punishment, and punishment means puny, to make small, to make a child feel small, that punishment can actually get you what you want. And of course it can get you obedience, but obedience based on fear or guilt is always accompanied by resentment. And then you lose heart connection with your child. You lose what's sacred and beautiful. So punishment doesn't work if you look at the long-term effects of it. And there's other ways. It's not just between punishment and permissiveness. People think if I don't punish them, no, there's lots of things in between those two extremes. So dads, moms, it's the hardest thing in the world, isn't it? The most beautiful and hardest thing to be a parent and to be a child. So is there anybody here who's not a parent or a child? It's a challenging journey. Lately I think I'm getting advanced coming attractions or a preparation for empty nest, for the empty nest syndrome, because every time my daughter goes away, I feel grief for a while, an experience like I miss her. It's very interesting. When my mother and I did that retreat in, I think, 1991 or something, the facilitators were saying, you two are too close. You need individuation before you can have a healthy relationship. You need to separate before you can get to the next level of relationship, because you haven't separated. There's still an umbilical cord. There's still this unhealthy bond, and that's not what we wanted to hear. That's not what we came for. That's not why we said, oh, let's do this. And it was very difficult to hear and to process, and then to go away and cut some of those cords that needed to be cut. And I knew what I was feeling about it, the need for autonomy, but I also had a sense of what my mother was feeling about it, how hard it can be to let go. I remember the first time my mother let me borrow her car. Now I can feel it in my body, what an act of trust that was. How devotional that is. I remember the first time she let me borrow her car after I totaled it. Talk about unconditional love. Oh my God. So anyway, I wrote this song for my mom, and it's a song about letting go and the courage and the tenderness and the imperfection, the messiness of being human and being a parent, and how much it calls us to divine love. How much it calls us to let go of our comfort zones and our habits and our protection. Motherhood, fatherhood, parenthood calls us to a love that we never would have came to without being a parent. Oh, take delight in my awkward flight. Don't ponder the how or the why. Leaving the nest to discover my best. Don't squeeze on my hand as I fly. Let go and wave, child, goodbye. Oh, take delight in my awkward flight. Your love and your fear weigh a ton. The distance I choose is no verdict on you. Don't battle what needs to be done. A man needs to grow from the sun. Son, I nursed you and rocked you and answered your cries. I looked out at life through your innocent eyes. Now So let me start to wrap up by sharing with you my favorite definition of hell. Marshall Rosenberg says, hell is having a child and believing there's such a thing as a perfect parent. I think he even says, believing there's such a thing as being a good parent. So the striving for perfection that comes early in parenting, when you want to just protect everything pure about your child, I've experienced that. And I had this prayer that was so funny. It was like, God, please allow me to parent my daughter in such a way that she won't need therapy. And then God showed me this amazing little antidote to that prayer when I was in a sort of a dream state one night, and I got to see my daughter 20 years later, sitting on a therapist's couch going, my parents, they were so perfect, I could never measure up to how good they were. And I realized you cannot avoid, you can do your best, but you gotta let go and just let the messy, imperfect, beautiful process have its way with your child and with you and with life. And so I wish you the best in your journey, and my hope is that somewhere along the way today you heard something and felt something that allows you to feel closer to your father or mother, whether they're deceased or in their body, or your child, and that also that you heard something that makes you want to come to the workshop today, or buy my book or a CD. That would be fun too. Anything, any way that I can more deeply touch and spend time with you. Thank you. The talk is complete.